Hello, I'm Scott, and welcome to episode 7 of our barrel modelling tutorial series in Maya. What we've done so far is we spawned in a poly cylinder, sized it up a bit, applied edge loops around the object and onto the top, extruded in the different changes in the geometry, applied a bunch of bevels around to smooth out the object, then placed soft shading on, spawned in a second cylinder for the nozzle and combined its geometry with the rest of the barrel. And we've went into the UV process now, where we've cylindrical unwrapped the walls of the barrel, we've planar mapped the top and bottom, done a cylindrical and a planar to get the nozzle, and we've used the Unitize tool and the stitching tools to build up our own rings of UV shells around this top lip here. And since the last video, I've finished stitching together the top of the barrel's lip, which we can see here is a UV shell. So if I go into shell select, I click this, what we're seeing here is each of these rows of faces is one of the rows of rings of faces on here, and I've sized and scaled all the ones on the bottom so that the texture density is the same throughout. And I'm just going to quickly go over again how you stitch these back together so that you can turn a bunch of little shells like this into one such as this here. So each of these is another set of faces running itself around the object, and even though the direction is different, that doesn't matter, not for what we're doing. So we want to right click and go to edge, and we want to zoom in a bit and move ourselves over here. So we want to double click each ring going around. We don't want this top one because that's connecting to the wall of the barrel. We just want to stitch together all of the edges on this bottom lip. So holding shift and just double clicking each ring as we go round. We don't want this inside one too, because that's going to stitch to the bottom face. So we just want to leave that top one and that bottom one alone, but all those in between we want to select, and then we want to do stitch together. And that is going to link them all into this one little UV shell here. So we'll just take that and we'll move it over here. Now it's a different density to the top, and both are a different density to the sides. So we need to scale this up a bit and move it into place. And then we need to do the same here, where we scale it up and we move it into place. Or in fact, we can just leave it there for now. Now we have 7 UV shells here, and we don't need that many. So what we can do now is we can go to edge, and on our UV map or on our object we can click an edge, we can double click the other edge here. Now this is selected here and down here because on the object it's this edge that runs around here, which is part of both of these UV shells. This is where they join. So this edge here on the UV is the exact same edge here because it's this one loop that runs around the object here. We can stitch these together and it makes the UVs flow without a break. Now we can do the same on the bottom here, where this edge is this edge here, so this shell's upside down, but this will fix itself. So if we do stitch together, we've now cut this 3 shells down into one, and if we zoom in we can see that our UVs run without break here, which is what we're after. We can now do the same, where if we just pick one edge on the top here and one on the bottom, and we click stitch together, we can attach the top and bottom faces of the barrel at one point, where we can cut down our UV shell count. We can then do the same with the nozzle, where we can just stitch this together like so, and it's going to bring the whole object down to 2 UV shells. The reason we want less UV shells is because each different shell we have is a different draw call when it goes into the game engine, and the more draw calls we have, the more memory that's taken up by this object. So we want to try and keep the memory count of the object as low as possible, so all these little changes all these little edits on an object like a barrel, say, that could be placed 4 or 5 times in a scene, save memory each time the barrel is placed. So we're just going to go to UV shell now. We're going to select both because they're far too big to fit into our 1x1 square. we're going to click Modify, we're going to go down to the Layout tool here, and we're going to click the little options box here, because we need to do a little bit of work first here. So the Layout tool is going to cram these down so that the scale from this shell to that shell stays the same, but it's going to bring them down so they fit into our 1x1 tile. So what we want to do is we just want to put on some shell padding. What shell padding is whatever value we put in here is how many pixels apart we're going to keep these two shells, because we don't want them touching each other, which is what they'll do now with the 0 padding. Because if they touch each other, if we have any anti-aliasing on when we texture, then colours from this object are going to bleed onto this object, and we might not want that, because we might have a black nozzle and a bright red barrel, but it's going to pick up some of the black colour from the nozzle. So we're going to put our shell padding to 20, and we're going to make our texture map size 2048, and we're going to hit apply, and then when we click layout UVs, we get both of them into the one UV map like so. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go back over here and go to object mode, and we want to take this material off now. So we're going to click our hyper shader, and I'm just going to bring it back in here, and we just want the Fong 1 material. So we just hold right click and assign initial shading group to selection, and we just get rid of the checker square because we don't want to export that on the object. So we'll just close that, and then we want to go to Windows, Workspaces, and we want to go back to Modeling Standard because we don't need the UV map in our scene anymore. So now that we've done that, we've got our UVs all sorted out, barrels looking nice, we've got the shells cut down to 2, and we know that the texture density is the same throughout. So in the next video I'm just going to walk you through the final steps for some export settings to set up, how to efficiently export your model, and how to prep it before you export so that you future proof it against issues further down the line. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the final video.